What if I told you the most powerful empire on earth doesn't have an army? It doesn't own land, or gold, or oil, and yet every government, every bank, every citizen on this planet serves it, without even realizing. This empire doesn't conquer nations. It finances them. It doesn't print money. It creates debt. And through that debt, it rules everything. Because in our world, the true rulers are not the ones who make the laws, but the ones who control what the laws are worth. Centuries ago, power was simple. Kings ruled because they owned armies. Empires rose because they owned land. But there was one group who discovered something more powerful than both: credit. It began quietly in the merchant cities of medieval Europe: Venice, Genoa, Amsterdam. Traders realized they could issue paper promises backed by gold they didn't physically have. Those papers began to circulate, and soon they replaced the gold itself. The first bankers learned a secret that would shape the next 500 years. Whoever controls credit controls kings. When monarchs ran out of money to fund wars, they turned to the bankers. Families like the Medici and later the Rothschilds built fortunes not from land, but from lending to those who owned it. They discovered that by financing both sides of a war, they couldn't lose. And with every repayment, every interest payment, their invisible empire grew. By the 18th and 19th centuries, nations themselves became addicted to credit. The Industrial Revolution was powered not just by coal and steam, but by debt. Banks created loans out of thin air, and governments guaranteed them with the taxes of generations yet unborn. Then came 1913, the turning point. The United States, after years of political battles, created the Federal Reserve System. It wasn't owned by the government. It wasn't run by elected officials. It was, and still is, a network of private banks with the power to create money as debt. The greatest trick the system ever pulled, one might say, was convincing people that the government controls money, when in reality, money controls the government. From that moment, the empire no longer needed kings or conquerors. It had central banks, and central banks became the new royalty, unelected, untouchable, and indispensable. For centuries, gold was the anchor that kept paper money honest. But in 1971, something extraordinary happened. President Richard Nixon announced the U.S. would no longer back the dollar with gold. The dollar, and every currency tied to it, became nothing but a promise. From that day forward, money became belief. And belief could be manipulated. With no gold limits, governments could borrow infinitely. Central banks could print endlessly. And the hidden empire discovered a new form of control: inflation. When you can print purchasing power, you don't need to steal it with weapons. You steal it silently by diluting what people already have. Every printed dollar made the ones in your pocket worth slightly less. Every expansion of credit made your labor cheaper in real terms. And because people didn't see the theft, they never resisted. By the 1980s and beyond, the empire was global. The World Bank, the IMF, the BIS, all extensions of the same philosophy: control through credit. Countries no longer fought for colonies, they lent to them. Developing nations were given loans they could never repay, in exchange for access, influence, and obedience. Debt, said economist John Perkins, is the modern form of empire. Domestically, the same pattern repeated. Easy credit made housing affordable, until it wasn't. Student loans made education possible, until it enslaved generations. And credit cards gave the illusion of freedom, while quietly draining the future. By 2008, the illusion shattered. The global financial system nearly collapsed under its own weight of leverage and greed. The empire saved itself, with money that didn't exist. And once again, we believed. Every solution since has been the same: print more, borrow more, promise more. Quantitative easing, zero interest rates, stimulus checks, new names for the same disease. The global debt now exceeds $315 trillion, more than 3 times the total world economy. But remember, for every debtor, there must be a creditor, and the question no one asks is, who holds the ledger? That's the hidden empire. It doesn't care about borders, elections, or ideologies. It profits from volatility, thrives on uncertainty, and expands through crisis. Because every disaster, every pandemic, every war, every bailout creates the same outcome: more debt. And every new dollar of debt deepens the empire's control. Look closely, and you'll see the same patterns today. Governments announce record spending, funded by borrowed money. Markets rise on liquidity that doesn't exist. Citizens celebrate until prices double, wages stagnate, and savings vanish. The empire no longer hides in vaults or palaces. It lives in algorithms, digital currencies, and international settlements. The next frontier: central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. A world where money isn't just created from nothing, but tracked, timed, and programmable. It's not a conspiracy. It's the logical evolution of a system built to control, not to serve. So what can we learn from this 700-year cycle? Lesson 1. Money is never neutral. It's a weapon, and someone always aims it. Lesson 2. Debts are chains, whether personal or national. The illusion of prosperity today is the price of freedom tomorrow. Lesson 3. Empires don't need flags anymore. They only need your trust and your silence. The hidden empire won't collapse overnight. It doesn't need to, because it already won. But awareness is resistance. Every time you learn how money really works, every time you question the headlines, every time you choose value over illusion, you weaken its grip. The empire thrives on ignorance. So let's end that advantage. Narrator, firm, final tone. If this opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Subscribe, share, and keep learning, because the most powerful weapon is knowledge.